this back up.
Hello and welcome, Inspired Podcast community. This is your new episode. My name is Caroline, and my today's guest is Dr. Shelby Decker, and I'm so happy that you are here. Welcome. How are you doing today?
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Wow, that's so great. And I love to introduce you to the audience first. You are a master of transformation, having navigated careers from corporate roles at Fortune 500 companies to entrepreneurship in construction, real estate, and beyond. After returning to school in her 40s, she earned multiple degrees, including a doctorate in business administration with a focus on strategy and innovation. A cancer warrior and caregiver, Dr. Shelby has faced significant personal challenges, which she shares in her 6 international bestsellers. Known for her expertise in turning ideas into profits, she helps businesses thrive by aligning operations, communication, and strategy. Welcome to the Inspired Podcast, Dr. Shelby Decker.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here and I hope I can inspire some of your audience.
Oh, yes, it's all about inspiration today. And my first question is, you've successfully transitioned through various careers from corporate roles to entrepreneurship and academia. What key lessons have you learned from navigating these major life changes?
I think one of the things that helped me, and as like I'm a big reader, I'm very curious. So the academia route was just a normal transition per se. But one of the books that I read was by Maria Shriver, and I can't recall the name of it, but in there she describes herself as a woman of many talents. But there wasn't that you're had all these talents at once, and there's different phases in your life, and you just have to embrace that phase and just, I want to say, step into, like, I think it's with The Secret, I think it was Jack Canfield said, it's like, you're on this path, but the headlights only shine what's in front of you to take the next step. And it just unfolds from one step to another. And that's basically how it happened with me. Is like, yes, I did have a destination in mind per se in my corporate career. Like, I knew I wanted to stay in one particular field, I wanted to advance in that area. But when it came to a point that it was like not making sense, and my intuition was telling me, like, this isn't right, you're struggling too much, you're not enjoying it, you have to make a change, you start looking at your other options. And also in the section is that when one door closes, another door opens. But so many times we focus on that one door that has closed and not really seeing the other options, or I want to say the mountain view per se, or range that you can take. And you just start viewing those options and you just say, okay, this is what I'm doing right now. It may not be the right one, but it may be the next step that I need to take to get to the right direction.
Wow, absolutely. I understand. So that means you were open to the opportunity and also to your impulses or your intuition telling you to, to do what you did at academia, let's say. And I love your journey so much. It's so inspiring. Thank you so much. Of course, I have another question.
Oh,
How
that's
has
good.
your
Shoot away. Just ask.
Okay. How has your personal battle with cancer shaped your approach to business strategy and leadership?
Wow. It'll have my cancer battle, and it's still a battle. I'm in remission. I'm in remission now for 6 months, but it allowed me to really take the lessons that I have learned throughout life, including the academia, to get to this point, and to overcome in my personal life. And then I brought it into my business. And I'm going to just share with you on the personal side of there. When I was sitting there, bedridden and basically wheelchair bound, and I was going to radiation treatments, and I couldn't even sit in a wheelchair, I had to be stretcher transport. I said, okay, what are the biggest challenges I have had up to this point, not including this? And one of them was my dissertation. And that is a very, I want to say stressful, but critical time with many, many lessons. And I said, how did I get through that? And one of the things is that with the academia program, it was a 10-week course, but every week you had milestones to do. And even though they may seem to have been very small at the time of just editing a chapter or two, it still made you go forward in the journey. So I said, okay, if you did that, how can you do this? And in that phase, I just was like, okay, so what's going to be my challenge for the week? And that was one challenge, was very small in the sense I am going to get into the wheelchair myself. And that was my 4-day challenge. And then the next challenge was like, because it was a weekend, next Monday when I go to radiation, I am not going to be on a stretcher. I am going to be in a wheelchair. So you make these little challenges, goals, objectives to do, and you reach for them and you strive for them. You also, which transfers over to the business side, but also it's that accountability and taking that ownership and that responsibility of doing it and doing what was necessary to get to that point. So I had to do the little exercises of first just flexing my feet back and forth to make my legs stronger, because at that point I had not walked for 3 months and I had lost a lot of muscle mass. So that was one thing. So accountability was one thing. Having that goal, definitely. Saying, okay, what is it going to take to do so? What are my resources? In the sense like, okay, I had physical therapy for a couple of days in between that time. I had the mechanics of a wheelchair being available so I could do it. I had nurses around that were able to be there in case I fell. I had to make sure someone was there to catch me, which is part of the accountability too, because a lot of time we don't think we need the coach or the mentor or the person to guide us, but you need to have someone to catch you, and just make sure you're doing things correctly. Because with the physical therapy, I had to make sure that I was getting myself to the edge of the bed correctly. I was pushing myself up correctly. I was turning myself around correctly so I didn't do it quickly and make just falls. So a lot of that was the determination and having a vision of what's next, like we talked about in the journey. But also, I think one of the greatest lessons that I learned about this whole thing is accepting me of who I am now, not who I was or who I will be, but where I am at that moment. And really embracing that and saying, I can no longer do what I wanted to do at this moment. But what can I do? What resources do I have? What's the energy level I have to accomplishment? And with that energy level, I also had to say, I only have this much energy, but I need to take a break. I can't push myself like I was. I can't do the 12 or 14 hours nonstop anymore. I can pretty good at that time I'm pretty good for 2 hours, and then I need to take a 45-minute nap. And accept that and say, okay, it's all right. Go ahead, take your nap, take your break, refocus, regain your energy so you could be prime where you need to be present.
Yes, I understand, and I love what you said, what you shared with us, because it has a lot to do with leadership. First of all, self-leadership, leading ourselves, of course. And you talked also about accepting help, the people to catch you. This as well is important. Most of the people are not willing to accept help.
That was very, very difficult for me because I was like, I could do it all. I was Wonder Woman. I had that cape and plus more, you know. And all of a sudden, I was very dependent on other people. I was dependent on people to give me um, items, in the kitchen. I couldn't lift a cup. I couldn't. I could lift a cup to myself, but I couldn't bring a cup from the kitchen to the couch where I was staying. I couldn't bring a plate of food to myself. I couldn't even stand there and wait for a piece of toast to be toasted in the toaster. So it was, when you have that, I want to say, two by four that came and knocked you down where you are, where you took things for granted in your life, and all of a sudden you can't, you have to rely on people. And that's part of the accepting, saying, okay, I can do this, but I can't do this. I need your help with this. And you have to enlist the right help in order to get you to that next level.
Yes, I understand it. And this is for everyone. I think we don't see it, and anytime there are people to help us as well. And I would like to know about the environment. So how important was it, or when you were not able to do the things like before, were they, the expectations people have? Then when you change, when something happened and you change, you cannot do this anymore like they are used to.
Um, there was, I'm going to be totally transparent here. There was moments of depression, and you say down. You want to say yes, I was down, but beforehand, being down meant like, hey, I had a tough day. Tomorrow's a new day. This was something totally different in the sense of I don't know how I'm going to go on, and also with the weekly blood tests and seeing the blood work come back in the ranges that were totally sometimes off the charts. It was very gut wrenching. It was very demoralizing. It was very defeating in many ways. And it did get to a point that I said, I totally understand why people give up and say, I've had enough, because what I was doing and relying on, and it wasn't working. It wasn't seeing, there wasn't even any signs of hope per se. So there is some challenges of turning it and making sure you recognize where you are, and that's a big thing, and I keep going back to is recognizing it, but you have to accept it. And I went to the doctor and for the follow-up, and I said, this is not me. This is not me. And I go, it's just not. I need to turn this around, and I don't know how. And that's the reaching out of hope that you need. But on the other aspect, you say, how do you pull yourself out? I was very much of being gratitude and having that hope. And if you look on what's going on in the world, and I'm here in America in South Florida, and I just automatically started looking at the little things that I do have. Like right now, and it's the middle of October, and we're in our I must say fall, beginning to go into our fall season everywhere in the US, but we're still 90 degrees. So that's like, I think 35 Celsius for you. So it's warm. It's warm. So, but it's like you go and say, you know what? I'm lucky enough to have air conditioning. I have clean running water. I have a home that I feel safe in. I unlike so many other places in the world, I don't have to worry about a bomb or sirens going off to warn me that there's incoming drones or bombs or, attacks. I'm very fortunate to have my dad who can in the next room to help me, even though I'm his prime giver. It works out. I'm very fortunate to have a very strong church that was behind me and praying for me. And you just take these little things to be grateful and you say, you know what? Life really isn't that bad. Yeah, I can't walk for the moment, but I can feel the sheets on my toes. So, you just like go through that. And I think it transforms into my business in the sense of like taking that moment and I say, what do you have? What can we work with? You're not starting from zero. We all have blessings in our lives. What are they? Let's identify those. Let's not look at what you don't have. Let's look at what we do have and then build on that. And then it was like the challenge is like I love books and I have tons of books and I'm like, you know what? This gives me a chance to do books, read my books that I've been pushing off. It gives me more time to journal in the morning, which I have been like sometimes I don't get to. It allows me to do more of the family meals and be time because my daughter is here helping me. So we're creating those memories that we may never have had.
That is
So,
amazing. Thank you
mhm.
so much for sharing. I totally understand. You are with loving people around you and creating memories. I love that. Of course, we created, and let me see. You emphasize turning ideas into profits in your work with businesses. Can you share a specific example of how you've helped an organization achieve this transformation?
Well, I think we just went through it. So you go back and you analyze, what are your challenges? What is resources do you have? Um, where's the gaps that you're lacking of what you have and where you want to go are your main problems and things. What ideas? And I love this part of it is to have a crazy brainstorming and just like and I call it throw stuff at the wall. How no matter how crazy it may sound, like, hey, let's call the aliens from outer space and have them, zap it. I mean, it just let it flow and think about it, and just say, okay, zap it. How can we zap it? And then just take a piece of it and try to go on. The other thing that I find with working with organizations and small business people and entrepreneurs is that they always have the ideas. If only I had, or I want to do this, but I don't have the time, or I want to do this, but I'm not sure of the process, how to implement it, or I saw this idea and I think it would help me in this area, but I'm not really sure how to set it up. So that's where I was like, so many times when we start reviewing about where our situation is, and that's why I call it, and you do it through so many things of your sales, of your client feedback. Is there an issue regarding retaining staff? Is there an if do you want to go in the direction of increasing your volunteers in a nonprofit situation? You know where you need to go as a business owner or a leader, community leader. You know where you want to take that group of people. It's just finding the methods, the techniques, and the resources to do so. So basically, it's like, okay, we may not be able to do this idea full fledged at this moment, but that doesn't mean you can't take the steps to start going in that direction, which I'm sure you've thought of, like doing a podcast. It's like what is needed in the podcast. And I'm sure you did some research and then all of a sudden you put a guest list together and then it's little baby steps going forward to doing it. But a lot of times because we're working alone, we say, hey, that's a crazy idea, or I don't have time for it, or if I only had the other resources and stuff. And sometimes you need people to say, that's really a great idea. You need to do that. and
Yes.
and that's all it takes for you to get the confidence to do it. Or like, well, how would you do that to bring it to that next step?
Yes, it's a sort of reflection, right? You externalize an idea, and then people receive it well or or bad. But the
Right, right,
question is when they say something negative, if that stops you or if you pursue your goals and dreams.
right. And then it's like, when you get a negative comment or a negative feedback, you could look at it and say, are they wrong or are they right? And a lot of times we don't like the messenger, but the message is correct. So it's like you had to differentiate what is being said, and then it's like, okay, what are they saying that's good, if any, and what are they saying it's bad? But the bad is really an area for improvement, and how can I make some type of improvement immediately?
I love that. It's also about observing and then analyzing or evaluating, right? What has been
Right.
said. Hmm.
And then they
Yeah.
also, and then people don't realize this too. If one person thinks it, or one person says it, there's other people thinking it. But only the one person really had the courage to speak up and say it to you.
Yes. That's true because we are all connected, right? Our minds that
Right.
is what we call mastermind, and we are connected. We have the same ideas, and the one person is courageous and
Steps
says,
forward and
yeah,
uses their voice.
so true. I have another question. As someone who returned to school later in life and earned multiple advanced degrees, what advice do you have for those considering a significant career pivot or educational pursuit?
Do it. Life's too short.
I knew you would say
What's stopping you?
hmm, what's
I mean, that's it. I mean, last year at this time, it wasn't known that my breast cancer had returned. That didn't happen until the first week of October. So I was still turmoiling in back pain. I was on back rest. And with the diagnosis that I had gotten, which was pretty terrible because I'm not supposed to be here right now. And I was supposed to be wheelchair bound by 2024. And I found out in October. So there was that dramatic news. But in the sense, too, is like with breast cancer and now it's attacking my spine. And I had 3 years before I went from my double mastectomy to my spine. That if I only had 3 years, what am I going to do in those times? That's like just over 1,000 days, if you think about it. What are you going to do in that time to make it important to others, leave your legacy, share your knowledge? What are you going to do then? And I don't have that time in the sense like, hey, I may have that plus some, but you may have that in some time too. And as I told my daughter when I found out that the cancer had spread to the liver, I had to break it to her and I go, well, I got some bad news. I got good news and bad news. I told her the good news first because that's what you wanted and I forgot what it was. But the bad news, I go, we're all dying. And she looked and she goes, yeah. I go, some of us are dying even before others. And some of us are lucky enough that we have maybe a time period to complete. But that doesn't mean that tomorrow going home, I could be hit by a bus, have a heart attack, or something else happen that I will not be here the next day. And I think we've taken that so for granted in it. So if you want to do something, find a way to do it. If that lights you up and you want to do it. I mean, if it means like, for me, I took courses. But on the other aspect, if you want to be an interior designer, but you don't want to go full-fledged school back and then get a degree because you don't have the, I want to say, the resources to do, monetary resources to do it, or that you don't want to put that much time in. And I'm not slamming you one bit, but go find, let's say, a 6-week course at the local high school that they have a continuing education. Develop that knowledge. Go to trade shows that are being offered till you learn the current trends. Just keep that passion alive. That's the most important thing. And, interact with people who are in the industry so you can learn, you could be knowledgeable. And, that way, when you walk into a place or a house, you could talk about the furniture. And I'm just using interior design as a main example there. But do that. And then that's what's important, is keeping that passion alive. I mean, education for me, a lot of people are like, well, what do you plan on doing with your education? I'm like, nothing. It's a personal goal. It doesn't have to be for anyone else, but for yourself.
Yes, that's so true. And I love what you shared. And first of all, I'm happy that you are here and that we can talk today and you share your
Yes,
insights.
it's wonderful.
I
Yeah.
learned so much about what you said, the little steps. Also, when you were in the wheelchair, you took little steps, training your feet, and now the advice is also just do it, do whatever lights you up, keep your passion alive. I love that very much. Just do it. We don't have much time left. You mentioned 1,000 days, and I start to I start to think now. About the number 1,000, and it's so true. So yeah, I encourage the listeners, please make up your mind or make a decision. And I have one last question for you. And you mentioned already goals, maybe little goals, big goals, whatever. Do you set goals for yourself or intentions? And what is one of your next
I
goals?
had very, I had, excuse me, my nose was running. Um, I had difficulties with this. And it wasn't until just recently that I started dreaming again, because I had all these goals and it had to stop because of my health and my inability to travel and everything. And also not knowing, I want to say, with a cancer diagnosis, you never know when it's going to happen again. And with it being severe the last time and being so focused on getting healthy or being at a healthier point, and then getting the news that you're in remission, but you also know it's a very delicate time period, that it could go very good, or you could slip back into needing the chemo and the radiation within a month's time, in a drop of a hat, let's just say. So it was very hard for me to plan ahead, have goals, what I want to do. And I had to go back to my vision books. I don't have vision boards, but I have vision books and binders with all my things. And all of a sudden, and it's going back to the first step. All of a sudden, it's like, okay, what do I want to do for Thanksgiving? What do I want to do? Christmas, my daughter's boyfriend's mother's coming in town. So that gave me something to look forward to. And it's just like all of a sudden it accumulated, like, okay, I could do short trips. What short trips can I do? What can I adapt back into my life from my old life that may still make sense? And I'm still questioning things. For example, I've been asked to do a presentation for women veterans, military veterans, down in Miami in November. And I have not done an in-person workshop for over a year and a half prior to my camp. And I'm thinking about it because even though it's an hour away, I have to go there. I'm going to have to stay overnight. I'm going to have to have the energy and be presentation well, and do I have that still in me? So I still question myself. I still have the goals, but I'm not sure, and I have to make those decisions. But also on the other side, it's like it's something to reach for.
Yes, I love what you said about Thanksgiving and your plans. It is something to look forward to. Yes, absolutely. I agree, and I love that so much. I will do this. I will adapt this as well. Thank you so much for our interview. Now is time for your last thoughts to the audience, please.
Okay.
Your last thoughts,
I'm sorry.
your last message to the audience,
Ah, the
please.
last message, my message. I'm sorry.
Your message. Yes.
I thought the audience was. I thought you had other questions for me from the audience. Okay, so my last message to the audience: life is short. You need to be thankful for every day. Make sure when you wake up, your attitude or perspective is, what can I do today to make someone else's life better? How can I share my knowledge? How can I share my joy and love to them? And how can I improve their lives? So I think that's the key. Um, be willing to accept you for what you are and what you're not, because even what you're not defines who you are, and it's okay, because that shapes and molds you, every perspective and every beauty uniqueness that you have inside yourself.
Thank you so much for your message. Thank you for our interview. Please reach out to Dr. Shelby. She's amazing. Or to me, I will do the connection then, introduce you, and then we can work together. Thank you. And this was our interview.
Thank you for having me.
And see you in the next episode.